Hello, I'm Matt Donnelly, and this is another edition of the Viper Bites Primetime Previews. This time we're talking Thursday Night Football, Dallas Cowboys versus the Tennessee Titans. Hey, look, the Dallas Cowboys, they are locking the number 5 seed there in the NFC playoff picture with an 11-4 record after beating the Eagles last week 30-24. Now, the Tennessee Titans, on the other hand, find themselves in a peculiar position on the outside looking in after not only losing to the Houston Texans last week 19-14, but dropping an earlier season contest to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who currently sit atop the AFC South. Now, Tennessee, they don't necessarily have to win this game as they have a Week 18 matchup against those same Jaguars later on here this season here. So this is not necessarily a must-win game for Tennessee, but this is a game that they have to win in order to gain a little bit of momentum heading into next week. But for the Cowboys, we are talking about momentum, so we have to talk about the Dak attack here. Dak Prescott, it's no secret that this Titans team has struggled this season defensively as they've been basically playing shorthanded much of the year due to injuries to key positions, to key players on that defense. Now, against opposing quarterbacks, the Titans are allowing 22.5 fantasy points per game over the last 4 weeks, which is more than 2.5 points more than they've been allowing all season long. They also surrendered a league-high 1,290 yards passing in that 4-week period there, along with 7 touchdown passes and 2 more touchdowns to quarterbacks on the ground. Now, it's no secret that how Sean McCoy feels when it comes to Dak Prescott, as he let his feelings be known on national television just a couple weeks ago. That was until last week when Dak Prescott ran his NFC record to 18-1 in the last 19 contests, and he threw for 347 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Eagles last week. Now, in McCoy's defense, he does have a leg to stand on because Prescott has thrown 11 interceptions since he returned in week number 7. He's thrown 8 interceptions in the last 5 contests. In 10 games this season, Dak Prescott has thrown for 2,450 yards and 20 touchdowns while adding an additional 155 yards on the ground on 36 attempts. A deeper look inside those numbers since that Week 7 return, Prescott is tops in touchdown percentage, red zone completion percentage, and success rate, while sitting second in touchdowns and completion percentage. Now, Dallas, they're averaging 30.5 points per game in the last 47 contests in which Dak Prescott has started. On the other side, we're talking about Prescott. He's already got his mojo kind of set going on. Now, Malik Willis, on the other hand, he is still a rookie. Now, if he was more of an accomplished passer, I would like this matchup much, much more against the Cowboys, who have allowed 1,119 yards and 7 touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks in the last 4 weeks, and the 5th most fantasy points to the position. Now, last week, Willis, he went 12 of 23 for 99 yards while adding 43 yards on the ground. Now, smart money says that Malik Willis is going to be running more and more this week, probably more for his life than anything else, while facing Micah Parsons and a Dallas defense that sits 3rd in the NFL with 49 sacks. We knew coming into the draft that Malik Willis was going to take some time to develop. We've seen the bad, we've seen the good, and like most rookies, Willis has experienced the highs and lows of those times. Those highs have drawn some comparisons. I'm not saying this is who he's going to be or this is who he's shown, but he has shown glimpses of Jalen Hurts-esque rookie campaign type development there. Now, Ryan Tannehill, he is going to be out for this contest, probably not just this week, but the final 2 contests for the Titans. So the time is now for Willis to step up and prove his worth there. By week 17, you are no longer a rookie in the National Football League. Willis, he has now started 3 career games. He's got those 3 games under his belt. However, he has thrown for less than 100 yards in each of those contests. The only quarterbacks in NFL history to suffer from the same futility as what Willis has been suffering from in NFL history, Nate Peterman and Dan McGuire. Now, that's not good company to be keeping. Now, good company to be keeping. How about these Dallas running backs? Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, they love each other's company. Tony Pollard is now just 12 yards shy of 1,000 yards on the season, while Elliott, he sits 171 yards from 1,000 on the ground and 79 total yards away from his 7th consecutive 1,000-yard season. Now, assuming that Pollard, he hits that 12 yards rushing total there, and if Elliott, if he can accumulate that 171 over the next 2 weeks, now it's a good thing that there's an 18-game season here, then Pollard and Elliott can be the first set of teammates since Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram back in 2019, and the first running back duo since Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams in 2009 to have two 1,000-yard rushers or teammates accomplish that feat. Now, Elliott, he appears far from washed up. Now, although Pollard, he got that NFC Pro Bowl accolade there, Elliott has scored a touchdown in 8 consecutive contests and has 10 touchdowns in the last 8 games. How good has Elliott been in recent weeks? Let me tell you, in week 16, his 13.1 fantasy points were the first time since week number 5 in which he didn't hit that 15 to 19 PPR points range. That's pretty darn good. Now, from a fantasy perspective, one area in which the Titans have been okay in is stopping the run, allowing the 6th fewest rushing yards over the last 4 weeks and allowing just 17.3 fantasy points to the position. Now, not all stats are created equal, and this is likely because teams have basically abandoned the run when facing Jeffrey Simmons there in the middle in favor of attacking one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. Obviously, we're going to touch on that a little bit later. Now, we talked about the backs there, the duo there in Dallas. How about Derrick Henry for this Tennessee Titans team? He is the great equalizer when it comes to an offense. You don't need to exactly establish a passing game to get Derrick Henry going. Now, you have to keep an eye on this injury report because Henry is dealing with a little bit of a hip issue heading into the short turnaround there on Thursday night. Now, he did miss Monday's practice, but he did get some work in on Tuesday, so you have to feel that Henry is going to be available on Thursday. Dallas is currently allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points this season to backs at 15.7, but to a healthy Derrick Henry, that doesn't mean lick. Now, when you're looking at Henry's numbers in games in which Willis has started, Henry has posted 460 rushing yards over those 3 contests. One reason which Henry is probably going to play this week is because he is a proud back. I'm telling you what, he sits 2nd in the NFL right now in rushing behind Josh Jacobs at 1,429 yards. That's still about 110 yards behind Josh Jacobs, but if there was a back capable of closing that gap, it's going to be Derrick Henry, who has created 1,170 of those yards after contact this season. If for whatever reason Henry is unavailable or limited in any way, then Hassan Haskins would be the next man up with a little bit of Julius Chestnut there, getting some snaps as well. Last week, neither of them got any touches. Now, even if the Jaguars win, the Titans lose, I kind of mentioned this at the top of the show here, the AFC South title, it still comes down to week number 18. So Tennessee, they may choose to rest Henry, even though he is going to be pushing to play. You heard those all week long, Henry talking about how he's going to be out there if he's able to get out there. Now, I would bet that we're going to see Henry on the field on Thursday night. The same might not have been said at the beginning of the season if the Titans would have been able to retain D'Onta Foreman, because he's looked pretty good there in Carolina, just saying. Now, as far as wide receivers are concerned, looking at this Dallas Cowboys team first, CeeDee Lamb. With all the success that Prescott has been having as of late, you have to figure that one of these receivers is benefiting. And since Prescott has returned under center, Lamb is averaging 10.64 yards per target, and he sits 8th in the NFL, 1,207 receiving yards this season, which also happens to be a career best, along with career bests in receptions at 91, which is 7th in the NFL, targets 135, which is the 6th best total, and those 8 touchdowns he has, that is tied for 5th. Now, last week, Lamb, he may have established himself as an alpha receiver, becoming the first Cowboys receiver to post 100 yards receiving in the first half, along with 8 or more receptions, since Michael Irvin accomplished that feat way back in 1993. And when the dust all settled last week, Lamb would go on to his 2nd career game in which he would record at least 10 receptions, 2 touchdowns, and 100 yards in a game which tied Amari Cooper for the most such games in Cowboys history. In fact, Lamb has at least 100 yards receiving in 4 of the last 7 contests. Opposite of CeeDee Lamb, we've got Michael Gallup. This is a huge back end of the season here for Michael Gallup. Against the Eagles last week, Gallup would go into Hall in 4 of his 7 targets for a touchdown and 36 yards. And I would expect those numbers to increase against a poor Titans secondary, especially as T.Y. Hilton becomes more and more involved in this offense and continues to open things underneath. Not to mention there's that sun thing kind of got in the eyes of Michael Gallup. He probably could have had more touchdowns last week. Now, Gallup, he has a couple more games this season and potentially a game or 2 in the playoffs to earn that 2nd contract with this Cowboys team. If not, he could be looking elsewhere for employment in 2023. We know Jerry Jones is having those secret meetings there with Odell Beckham Jr., and Jones has been very vocal, needing to get more out of Gallup opposite of Lamb. But the truth of the matter is, we still have not seen the same explosiveness from Gallup that we had seen prior to that ACL injury. Good news is for these Dallas Cowboys pass catchers, In the last 4 weeks, the Titans, they have allowed the fourth most receiving yards, 812, the seventh most touchdowns at 5, and as well as the fifth most fantasy points to receivers on a per game basis in the NFL. And that's at 44 points per game. So you got to figure out there's got to be plenty out there for CeeDee Lamb, for Michael Gallup, for T.Y. Hilton, even for Noah Brown. Now, unfortunately, on the other side of the ball there, when it comes to these Tennessee Titans receivers, whether it's Nick Westbrook-Akeen, Treylon Burks, Robert Woods, there's not going to be a whole lot of meat left on the bone in this passing game. It is difficult to trust any Titans receiver as long as Willis is under center. And that's just the simple truth right now. Perhaps Burks gets a few more touches there in the run game there, out of the backfield, like that one he took for 15 yards last week. The Titans are going to need to find a way to manufacture touches for someone other than Derrick Henry this week if they hope to keep this aggressive Dallas Cowboys front off of their rookie quarterback. In 9 games this season, Burks has 25 receptions for 359 yards, both which sit second among rookies on the Titans. That's right. Rookie Okonkwo is ahead of Burks in both categories as we enter week number 17. Good news, if there's any, Burks and Okonkwo rank 5th and 6th in yards per reception when we're talking about this year's rookie class. Now, as for Robert Woods, he is a leader on and off the field, that veteran presence for this Titans team, and he appeared to be the target of choice for Willis last week, hauling in all 4 of his targets for a team high 30 receiving yards. Yes, that's where we're at when we're talking about this Titans passing game right now. There are very few teams that have allowed more fantasy points to receivers over the last month than what the Titans have. And the Cowboys, they are one of those teams. Dallas has yielded the most receiving touchdowns, 9, the third most yards at 829, and they sit second in points allowed, averaging 50.5 per game against. So if you're looking, there's a chance that these Titans receivers could come alive this week. Unfortunately, I think Malik Willis, he is still going to limit that ceiling. Now, we look at the big guys there that catch passes. How about Dalton Schultz and Okonkwo there? First, starting with Dalton Schultz there. He has seen at least 4 or more targets in each of the last 9 contests for the Cowboys in which he has suited up. And last week, he turned those 4 targets into 3 receptions for 43 yards. In today's tight end market, that's really all that you can ask for. 7.3 PPR for performances there. Yes, it has come down to that in fantasy football. The bar for tight ends has been lowered. It's been set that low that we are praising 7-point performances out of the position. Tennessee, they have struggled defending anyone this season when it comes to catching balls. And the tight end position, it's no different. The Titans, they rank 30th in the NFL in fantasy points against, allowing 19.9 per game to opposing tight ends over the last 4 weeks, having allowed 385 yards and 2 scores over that period. As for Okonkwo, it's hard to put your faith in anyone outside of Derrick Henry this week for the Titans, and that includes Okonkwo, who faces one of the stingier defenses against tight ends over that last 4-week period. Dallas is allowing a mere 8.9 fantasy points per game and have not allowed a receiving touchdown to a tight end over the last month, while allowing just 187 receiving yards. It's also worth noting here that since Burke returned last week from the concussion protocol, Okonkwo saw a dip in his usage as he was involved in just 46% of the snaps while sporting a 41% run route rate there and an 8.6% target share. Okonkwo, he was on a little bit of a streak prior to being held to 10 yards on 2 targets last week. That streak consisted of 7 consecutive contests in which he would record at least 31 yards, which made him an interesting stream play each and every week. This week, I wouldn't count on that. But what I would count on is fantasypoints.com. Head over there today. Get 30% off right up into the Super Bowl. Your one-stop shop for all your fantasy football needs. And we will see you next week.